Today, we're going to start our shop maintenance and organization playlist and to kick it off, our 3-part series, Shop Tour. Let's get to it. Exciting day today, guys. We're kicking off our first video in our shop maintenance and organization playlist. We're going to kick it off with a 3-part shop tour where I'm going to give you all the ins and outs and all the cool features I've built into this shop. Today we're going to start on the miter bench and all the features that I've designed into that bench. It's really going to help you guys save some time. Next week we will focus on the saw table, and then the final video will focus on all the other notable items in my shop. For example, the dust control, we'll hit the welding setup, my blacksmith setup, my shop hoist, any of the other tools that I use on the regular that I think would benefit you guys. With that, let's get to it. All right, everybody. This is the view from my shop as you come out from the house. The shop is roughly 1,700 square feet. I know it doesn't look like 1,700 square feet from here, but I'll show you why it's special here in a moment. This is your standard 3-car garage. I've got a standing rule with the wife that as long as she has a spot to park in, the rest can be mine, which is fantastic. You can't ask for better than that. So I've given up that spot, and that's actually supposed to be my workspace for fabrication. That's the boat that we'll be working on in some upcoming playlists, but that boat is gonna move over to this spot right here, which currently houses some of our landscaping stuff and some stuff from the winter. So that will all be moving into the shed that we're gonna be building on this channel here this summer. So subscribe if you wanna see that video, and that's coming soon. But I'll show you what makes this shop so much bigger here right now is the fact once you make this corner back here, it opens up and goes all the way back to the back of the house, which is really my workspace area. All right, everybody. So I pulled the boat out of the shop so you can see how it would normally look when it's moved into its final place. Then come on over to the back of the shop. You see our welding station there, but this is all my fixed table stuff. Most of my tools, grinders, bandsaw. We'll be covering this more in detail in a second with my assembly table and saw table in the back, and supply storage in the right-hand corner, which is a complete disaster, and I'm not looking forward to cleaning that mess up. And then more supply storage on the left. All right, so another one of my favorite features of this shop is my miter table, and it's my tool storage. Way cheaper than buying a bunch of Husky or even Harbor Freight toolboxes. It literally stores everything. I'll break it all down here for you in a second. We're gonna start out with how it was made, materials, that kind of stuff, and we'll get then into the details. So again, keeping with the theme of my saw table, it's all made out of melamine here. Everything nice, clean, white, keeps it looking pretty, but is super durable and really cheap material to use to build these cabinet boxes. I'd say half the price to build them out of plywood. Is it cheap? No, I think I probably have $1,000 into this, but to build a 16-foot long workbench like this with all these drawers out of plywood would cost you twice that, so maybe $2,000, $3,000. And if you're buying them as pre-made toolboxes, it'd cost you well over that, maybe $10,000. So you'll also notice that these drawers don't have hardware on them. They've got all beveled edges, so you can stick your finger right under here and just pull it right out. And that saved me a ton of money for cabinet hardware. So cabinet hardware is obviously really expensive. In some cases, it's even more expensive than the wood to build it. So you don't need cabinet hardware. You can actually just bevel those top edges and get rid of that expense as well. All my countertops are MDF covered in shellac, making them really easy to refinish when we need to later. So just like the saw table, you'll see that I built a base here with legs on it. This is actually built, since this is 16 feet, this is built in 2 8-foot sections. If I didn't do it in 2 8-foot sections, it was gonna have too much bend in the middle, and it wasn't going to be nice and sturdy. So I had to do this out of 2 sections. I would not go over 8 feet. And then I just covered, again, they're built out of 2x4, so then I just covered that front 2x4 with some melamine to make it look pretty, and then mounted my boxes on top. This is made up of 1 box, 2 box, 3 boxes, 4 is the drawers, and then 5 are my grinding belts down there at the end. So it's actually made out of 5 separate cabinet boxes. So starting with the miter table, which is the first 8 feet of this table here, you can see I have 2 miter saws. One is my chop saw, one is my DeWalt saw for wood. We still got some work to do here, but we have some interesting features. So the way these saws are is that the 2 beds are not the same heights. So I wanted to be able to run my wood all the way across and utilize all 16 feet of this miter table. So to do that, I needed these 2 tables to be the exact height. To accomplish that, I routed out a depth here and inserted T-tracks. So that T-track is sitting low enough to expose enough of this edge to bring this saw table up to match the height of this saw table. So it took a bit of math and a bit of work to make it happen, but it is super cool and totally worth it. The other thing you'll see here is that I almost have these that will look like backsplashes, and they're not. These are the fences for the miter tables with T-tracks on top. These just pull right out. They're trying to do this one-handed. It's not easy. And then you'll see I have these dowel holes in the countertops. So if I'm using my chop saw, which sits further back from the front face, I can put my fence here, which gives me a fence to work with the chop saw. And on the flip side, in 1 sec, I'll move this stuff. So this one pulls out as well. It's put into its dowel spot. And now both saws line up perfectly, and I have an 8-foot fence. And front to back wise, so here to here, this plane is also the same. Now you might see these screws here on all 4 feet and wonder what that is. So this saw table with my dust control hooked up, put this in. So my dust control hooked up doesn't really fit very well when I lift the table. You see that it gets stuck on the back. So really, for this dust control to work, this table needs, or the saw needs to move forward. So to do that, and I'll show you, we just unclip, unscrew these, loosen them. All 4 corners. And now this saw table is free to move forward. So I can move this to the front edge, lock these back down. I've got a second set of dowels, so I can move my fence forward. And now, I got enough room for my dust control to move. So when I'm using this saw, I use that saw in this forward position here. So I have my dust control. I can't move this any further forward. So this is no longer parallel with this or on plane with this. But at the same time, I can just crank this guy open here, pull it back, move this fence up to here, and now I have an 8-foot fence for the wood saw. So again, super functional for me, just because I don't need 2 separate workstations for my chop saw versus my wood saw. I don't have to pull go pull my chop saw out and set up a spot on the floor in the fab location, which takes forever. If you guys are dragging tools out and having to set up every single time, this fixed tool setup will save you a ridiculous amount of time. So if you got the shop space for it, I definitely recommend it. The only thing that we have somewhat of an issue here that I found on this one, and I knew this going in, is that when I cut with the chop saw, it's throwing a whole bunch of sparks, which has kind of already ruined the finish on my tabletop here. And you can see that it's throwing sparks into the drywall. So coming up as part of the shop maintenance series on this channel, we'll be building a back box for this. So we're gonna build a box that kind of rides these contours, fits in back here. This is a metal top. I already put the metal top underneath, and we'll line the inside of that box with metal so that those sparks stay contained, and we'll connect that up to our dust control system here. So all the dust gets sucked into the vacuum and it does not burn the drywall or my countertop. All right, let's talk about the tool drawers. So this would be like your standard kind of husky toolbox that you buy at Home Depot. So shallow drawers for all my hand tools. And you'll notice they're all labeled nice and neat along the sides here. So screwdrivers, pliers, wrenches, hammers. This is kind of a miscellaneous drawer and why it's not labeled, and then specialty tools for like vehicle testing and so on and so forth. Now you're gonna see when I open these are extremely unorganized and definitely not where we wanna be at the end of the day. We open this, and yeah, complete mess. So part of our shop maintenance series is organizing these drawers. Everything needs to have a place, it needs to be labeled, it needs to be easy to find, and it needs to be easily returned to its home. So everything in here will have foam inserts, and they'll be double layered. So we'll do a colored bottom layer, a black top layer, and we'll cut out a space for each and every single tool, which is gonna be really tedious and dumb, but worth it in the end if you ask me. So that way, again, if I want to return this Allen wrench, it'll have a spot that's very clear to see where I put it, and it goes back to the same place every single time. Moving down to pliers, a little less crazy, but again, still everything will have a place. Socket sets, etc., separated by metric and SAE on each side, each having its, again, own foam cutout location. Moving over to our miter table drawers. We see these vertical drawers, and I'm a huge fan of these things. I love it because it just saves so much space. So for a saw, we can put our saw blades in here in a vertical position, which this one is not done yet, so we still need to mount saw blades in here, of course. But a good use of space without taking up a bunch of horizontal space. We've got 2 drawers for the miter, 2 drawers for the chop saw blades. And then inside each of these drawers underneath are really just your accessories. So like the wrenches that come with your saws. In this case, I have a stop for the miter fence. If I'm cutting the same pieces, I can slide that into the T-track on top of this miter fence here. And just move it down, and now I have a stop point and I can cut the same piece repeated over and over and over again. This section of the cabinets are really for kind of some miscellaneous items. This bottom cabinet box is just a pull-out drawer that I can put some of my more random stuff. I have my drill bit sharpener, borax for forging, some flashlights, my paint guns. I mean, they're all just kind of random stuff that won't fit into some of the smaller drawers. And then up here we have all my PPE gear. Again, a lot of people, you'll see this stuff just laying around their shop. I like everything to have at home where it can be put away and look nice. And here are manuals. So I'm a huge proponent of manuals. I keep all of them, and I keep them all in one drawer. Coming over to my bandsaw. I hate this bandsaw. Like, I absolutely hate it. I'm a fan of Ryobi because they're cheap and they work, but this saw really sucks. You can't get a straight cut to save your life. So I don't recommend buying this saw. I'm not gonna do anything to make this better. I'm going to remove it and throw it in the trash. Instead, we're gonna be putting up a porta band and we'll fix that in a vertical position with a rest so we can get blades that'll cut both wood and metal. This one does wood really poorly and it won't even do anything to metal, so don't even think about it. Underneath of it though, we have, again, another vertical drawer, and this is really meant for its saw blades. So these are meant, again, to be open vertically, and this will store the saw blades here to keep them nice and in shape, right? Rather than having them hang all over your shop and get all twisted up with the changing weather. We're gonna put some skate wheels in here and just kind of keep them in its nice, natural shape to make it easy to pull them in, pull them out, and keep them nice over a period of time. Plus, again, that vertical drawer really saves a lot of space. Next up is the drill press. Now, as much as I hate the Ryobi bandsaw, I really like the drill press. I mean, it's not amazing. It definitely has its flaws, although I've had this thing for, I think, 10 years now, and it does everything I need it to do as far as cutting metal, wood, being accurate. I mean, it's perfect for me and what I do. So I really like this thing, and I will definitely be keeping this. Underneath here, so lots of drill bits to get organized here. And again, these will all get their own vertical storage position, labeled, pretty, have a spot every single time to be returned to. Same spot every single time. And then below, we just have some kind of random stuff for my grinder. This is a tooling arm that I'm finishing. I haven't finished building it yet, for a contact wheel. Some other random stuff. I'm actually gonna skip down because these aren't really filled yet, which is great to have extra space that's unused, by the way. Don't build a shop, fill everything up right away. Make sure you're leaving room for adding tools down the road, because inevitably we're gonna add some stuff. Here I kind of keep some of my sanding supplies, so like my buffing discs, and then just under that, so that everything's kind of in the same spot, I keep all my grinders and my flat discs. Next up is the grinder. Now, I'm a huge fan of this grinder. I love it. By far one of the best additions to this shop. I spent a lot of time researching and looking at grinders to buy, and they are extremely expensive, some between $3,000 and $5,000. This grinder is the HouseMade grinder by HouseMade. It's a kit. You can buy it in multiple ways. You can buy just the plans, where you can mill out all your own pieces and parts yourself, or you can buy a kit that has all the pieces cut for you. I happen to just buy the pieces that were cut for me. I don't have a laser cutter. Some of this plate steel is pretty hard to cut accurately without a laser cutter. And for tooling, especially this kind of tool, you really want things to be accurate and in tight tolerances. So I just went ahead and ordered the pre-cut kit, which included the tube steel, all the plate steel, I mean, everything really minus the wheels. And then I bought the wheels from HouseMade as well. And then the motor I had to buy on Amazon. So all in all, I think I spent $1,500 on this kit. Again, half the price of doing it, having it pre-built or buying it pre-built. The finish that you see on here is just covered in Penetrol. So it's sanded steel to 320. And with this stuff put on top of it as a protectant to keep it from rusting, it works really good. And I really like the metal finish that it leaves. And then I put Arizona hardwood handle on there. Power-wise, this is what houses my VFD. I got a cheap Chinese VFD. I think it cost me $80 versus the $300 one that's enclosed itself. But you do need to enclose those cheap VFDs or they're gonna get covered in dust and ruined. So inside here is housing the VFD. And then I run the wires from the VFD to the controller underneath and inside of this cabinet, which come up through to this 3D printed box. And you can buy this 3D printed box from HouseMade for my speed controller. So all I do when I want to fire it up, hit the start button, my VFD turns on, set my speed to whatever I want, hit run, and we're up and running. You can see how quiet it is. I love this machine. And worst case scenario, if you get into a jam, you do have an emergency stop. So I have a flat platen table, and this is the true tilt table for grinding angles on a bevel. So this thing is really, really, really nice for grinding your bevels. And then along the side here, I actually store the D-plate bracket for the front so that this thing's not hanging out in the front every time I walk by this and I clip myself. So really what we do is we just undo this handle here and pull this front piece out. And then we can hang it from the side. And now we've got a really small footprint. So again, I don't clip the front of this every time I walk by. I kind of talked about this earlier, but here's the grinding light. So I only turn this light on when I'm grinding because it's super bright and obnoxious, but you can see how bright this thing is, and it really makes a difference when you're grinding. So you don't have to wear a headlamp and move it around at different angles to see different light. It's right there for you. Bright light is your friend when grinding steel. I'm gonna turn this back off because it's bright on camera. All right, another really cool feature of this grinder is my belt storage. Again, you see these vertical belts, and these are vertical boxes. These are actually finished, so you can kind of see how these other ones are gonna look when we get them done for the bandsaw and the table saw. So I'm gonna go ahead and set this down, pull this out for you, and I'll show you how it works. This pulls forward. And everything is on here, but not too tight. So for all you guys that know that keeping tension belts is gonna ruin your belts, I know. Thank you to the belt grinder group because you guys helped me with that. So these wheels, again, they're not tight. These can easily be pulled off, but they're still held in their original shape. So it keeps that shape. If anybody that's used grinders before, you'll know that if you leave these things out hanging, they just tend to twist when the weather changes and they stretch. And so keeping them in a nice tight, not tight, but a nice shaped position here will make it so that every time we want to pull one of these out, just like so, they're still in a good oval shape. I don't know if you can see that full on camera, but, and then putting them away is really easy too. Just pop it up here. Put your bottom one under, slide under that wheel. And now I can store, you do about 3 belts per, so 3 here, that's 6 belts per side, 12 belts per cabinet. And I have 3 total cabinets. So these 3 vertical cabinets are enough to literally store all of my belts, from my ceramic for metal and Trizax to my finishing belts and for sharpening, my stroping belts for knocking burrs off and stuff. So excellent feature. I mean, what's the first thing you see when someone has a grinder in their shop? You see belts hanging everywhere. It's just an unorganized disaster. So these cabinets, probably one of the best ideas I've had so far. They really, really, really help keep your belts organized. If you guys have any questions about how I built these, feel free to drop me a comment, although I think they're pretty self-explanatory. It's just a couple skateboard wheels, some bolts, some wing nuts for the tensioner wheel, and that's it. So, all right, everybody, that pretty much wraps up this video for today. Thanks for watching. Make sure you hit that like and subscribe button so that you get notifications for when that next video drops. The very next video, we're going to cover this saw table behind me and all the awesome features built into that. Thanks for watching.